Welcome to my video on the best Terastal for every poison type Pokemon. So we will take the poison type pure as well as all of the dual typings of the poison type, and we will assign them Terastal typings. And I'll go through multiple Terastal typings and explain for each one of them. If you're looking for a specific typing, go down in the description below and there will be a timestamp for each of the typings so you can go and check that out. Now, I do want to ask as well if you could interact with this video in some way, shape or form. I really would appreciate it. Honestly, this thing's been my baby. It's taken so much time, effort and passion to do this, and I just really would appreciate any interaction that I could get with this so this thing doesn't flop. But yeah, without further ado, let's get started. Just some clarification about this video. First of all, this is not an exhaustive list of every single Terastal that would work well with that typing. It's just ones that, in my opinion, would work best for those specific typings. Also, this does not factor in abilities, so in the trailer we saw that Colossal turned to a water type Terastal and had its steam engine activated. Now, in some cases there are going to be abilities that are going to allow for this to be able to take place effectively, and it's going to allow for abilities to be used with regards to the Terastal combination. And when I've talked about the typings here, I have not considered abilities. I will talk about that separately when I do the competitive guide videos in the future. Also, some Pokemon may be suitable to use specific Terastal based on powerful moves that they have. So for example, if a Pokemon has a ground type move such as Earthquake, which is more powerful than Terra Blast, then they could definitely turn to that Terastal to get that stab to be able to allow that to do more damage. So in some cases where Pokemon have got powerful moves or a wide move pool, they may be suitable to use more variety of Terastal, but again, I have not factored that in with this one, just on the specific typings as a generalization. Here we have the pure poison type. Now there are a few reps here. You've got Muck, you've got Weezing, you've got Garbodor, but there are plenty more pure poison type Pokemon out there that can be used also. Now, with the poison typing, you've got two weaknesses, ground and psychic. The best Terastal in this case would be the bug typing. One, because it hits super effectively on psychic types and takes not very effective damage from ground types, both of your weaknesses. So bug typing, definitely the top tier one. Water and grass, they both cover the ground typing, as well as ice being able to cover the ground typing, and they all take neutral from the psychic typing there, but they will work less well than bug, at least in my opinion. So bug would be your top tier typing in this case, but water and grass being a secondary option. Next up we have the normal poison type, where there are no Pokemon currently at time of recording. We have got 4 different Terastals that I'd recommend for this one. You've got the grass and water in terms of what will come in against the poison type. You'll expect a ground type most likely to come in against the poison type, and the grass and the water are both super effective against that ground type that predictably would come in. You've then got dark type to cover the psychic type that could come in against the poison type, and obviously that would be super effective. You just need to be aware potentially someone could bring in a fighting type on a neutral aspect. Obviously you're not going to get that 2 times damage from the neutral aspect. And then you've got psychic here as well. Now psychic will resist the psychic type attacks that could potentially come in from the poison type, and they'll also hit the ground type for neutral damage as well. So psychic potentially could work alright here, but I would definitely say grass, water, dark would be your bigger ones in this aspect. Here we have the bug and poison types. The 2 notable Pokemon that I've put here are Scolipede and Venomoth. Now we know Scolipede is far better than Venomoth in competitive, but I thought I'd put it in there regardless. So with this typing, your main weaknesses that you have still got are your rock, your fire, and also you have got a psychic type weakness as well. So with this, for your psychic type weakness, I have put either a dark or a ghost Terastal that would get rid of those weaknesses, and it would also either give you an immunity to psychic types or allow you to hit them for super effective damage. And if you go for ghost, obviously you get the built-in immunity of normal types. You've then got water type to cover both the fire and the rock aspect. Now obviously ground type covers that as well, but I've just put the water type in here as a potential option. So those are the 3 Terastals I'd recommend, depending on whether you feel that you're weaker to psychic or weaker to fire or rock. Will depend on that. Obviously you do have flying here as well, so you could run things like an electric or an ice type Terastal, but that is obviously an option for you to decide what to run. As I said, these aren't exhaustive lists. Next up is the dark and poison type. There are 2 Pokemon here that are notable, Drapion and also Skuntank, and they only have 1 weakness. They have a weakness to ground type Pokemon. So in this case, water or grass are your best Terastal because they're super effective against ground types. You could run flying to have the immunity if you wanted to, but I think the water or grass are going to be better. The grass probably going to be the best one because it does resist the ground type attacks as well, I think. Not 100% sure now that I've said it, but I think that grass does resist ground type. Here we have the dragon and poison type. Now the only typing we have here for Pokemon is going to be Dragalge. Now this thing, the main weakness you're probably going to see is your ground type weakness, also your dragon type weakness. You have also got psychic type weakness as well, so you could definitely run a ghost or a dark Terastal in this case, but I think ground is much more likely to come up, so I definitely recommend having a grass or a water to cover that ground weakness. I've also put a fairy type here just in case a dragon type Pokemon comes in to try and hit you for hard damage. You can then fairy Terastal and turn into an immunity there. Now, it's unlikely a fairy type Pokemon will come in against you because you are poison type and you do have access to really strong poison type moves, but if that was the case, you could definitely turn to a steel Terastal, but again, be very cautious because that ground type attack could hit you very, very hard because you still have that weakness. Next up, we have got the electric poison typing, and the only Pokemon that applies this to is Toxtricity currently, but there could be more in the future. Now this typing, the big standout is obviously the ground type weakness. You are 4 times weak to ground, so turning to grass, water or ice to cover that weakness would most definitely work best. In fact, I'd recommend grass would probably be the best one for the job there. But you do also have a weakness to psychic type Pokemon, so those psychic type Pokemon could come in. It might be a good idea to be able to Terastal into a dark type, which would then be super effective against the psychic type. Even a bug type would probably work as well to be super effective against the psychic type, but it has less usability. I guess the bug type does have a resistance to ground as well, which could potentially work in your favour, but you do need to kind of consider what would work best personally for your team. Next up, we have got the fairy poison type, represented by the Galarian Weezing. Now this typing, you haven't really got as many weaknesses, but you have got different weaknesses to kind of normal fairy types. So steel type weakness is still there, and having a ground Terastal is definitely going to be a really good option, and someone could bring in a poison type to resist your poison and also get neutral damage on you, so ground type could be really, really good in fighting against the fairy type weaknesses. You have also got the opportunity for your opponent to bring in ground types here with going against the poison typing, so you could use ice or water type. I wouldn't recommend grass because realistically they could bring another poison type on you, like I'd said, and that would be super effective against you in that scenario. You have also got the weakness to psychic types. You definitely could run a dark or a ghost type Terastal here as well, but that would just go against kind of that one scenario. So I think ground covers the most scenarios, but all of the other ones I've mentioned would be viable in kind of specific situations based on your team building. Next up, we have the fighting and poison type. So there are several different weaknesses that you do have associated with this typing. So there's the ground type in particular, there's flying type, and there is also the psychic type, which you are 4 times weak to. Now, with regards to the psychic type, I definitely would consider having either a ghost or a dark Terastal. I think that's the biggest one because obviously that's your biggest weakness and it takes away a lot of the problems. In terms of dark, it completely takes away the impact of the psychic typing. Now, you might want to have a look at the flying type and go for an electric type or an ice type or a rock type Terastal in order to cover that. Obviously, going for electric, it then only opens you up to 1 weakness, but bear in mind you are weak to ground already, so you may want to consider going for the ice type as an alternative. And then I've gone for the grass type here because realistically you're going to have the ground type come in, and if the ground type comes in, you can use the grass type attacks and also have your grass type resistance against the ground type there as well. Next up is fire poison. The only Pokemon that is relevant here really is Salazzle, but there could definitely be more coming in the future. So the main weaknesses you have got here are a 4 times weakness to ground, a 2 times weakness to rock, a 2 times weakness to psychic, and a 2 times weakness to water. So again, in this scenario, based on the other ones as well, I would recommend that you use a grass Pokemon because it covers the rock, it covers the ground, and it covers the water type. So grass typing here would be fantastic. Now, realistically, you could see another ground type come in, so this could be a water type Terastal as well. So water type would cover the ground and the rock and allow for you to resist the water type. Now, when it comes to the psychic type, obviously you do have the weakness to that. I have decided to put the bug type in here because that would mean that you would be able to hit a super effective attack on the psychic type as well, whilst resisting the ground type attack. Now, obviously it doesn't mean much for the rock type attack, but it could definitely work in your favour. You could also run a dark type if you wanted to, or a ghost type, but I thought in this case, in this scenario, bug type works slightly better. Here we have the flying and poison type. Now the only Pokemon that applies here currently is Crobat, but there could be more in the future. Now, with this typing, you have got 4 weaknesses. You have got your flying type weakness of electric, rock, and ice, and you have the poison type weakness to psychic. Now, with regards to the psychic type weakness, I've decided to put in a dark type Terastal if you wanted to run that, but you could also run fighting or ground to deal with your flying type weaknesses. So ground allows you to cover the rock type and the electric type weakness for super effective damage, and fighting allows you to be able to cover the ice and the rock type. However, bear in mind that obviously a psychic type can come in that will be super effective against the fighting. So do be very cautious when it comes to playing the fighting type, but I definitely think ground type would be a really good option here. Dark and fighting are good alternatives as well. Here we have the ghost and poison typing, and the notable Pokemon here is Gengar. I don't think any other Pokemon does have this typing at current. But with this, you have got a couple of weaknesses. So with the standard ghost weaknesses of ghost typing and dark typing, and then the poison has the ground and the psychic typing. Now, the chances of a psychic type coming in are quite slim because you have got the ghost type stab capability here as well. But in that case, I definitely would recommend that you run a dark type Terastal, because that dark type Terastal, one, gives you an immunity to psychic, makes not very effective for ghost type damage, makes not very effective for dark type damage, and allows you to be able to hit the ghost and the psychic type Pokemon for super effective damage. You then have the fairy, which you could run in case a dark type Pokemon comes in. You also have the water type Terastal to be able to cover for any ground type that might decide to come in. But I think in this situation, dark type is going to be the best Terastal, followed by fairy, and water being a good secondary one if you can't run that for any reason. Next up, we have a fairly common type in the grass and poison typing. So a few notable Pokemon we have here: Venusaur, Amoonguss, Roserade, Vileplume, Victory Bell, but there are several more that do fit into this category as well. Now, the main weaknesses you have got here are going to be your fire type weakness, they're going to be your flying weakness, and they're going to be your psychic type weakness. And also fire. So I might have said fire, I don't know. But what we're going with here is the rock type is the best Terastal here because it gets rid of the flying, it gets rid of the fire Pokemon as well. So super effective against both of those in most scenarios, of course. So your rock Terastal is going to work very, very well there. You've also got the water Terastal because it's super effective against the fire type and also basically nullifies any of your other weaknesses to just neutral damage. And then I've also put dark here because, as I said, psychic type is a weakness here. It allows you to get the immunity to the psychic types, which would be really beneficial for you, and neutralizes any of the other threats that would come in against this. So dark type, definitely a really fantastic one to have. I'd say rock's probably the best because it hits the most types, but water and dark, they change your typing enough to be able to work very, very effectively. Next up, we have got the ground poison type, currently harnessed by the Nidos. These are the only Pokemon I believe that have the ground poison typing. I might be wrong, but after time recording, there could also be new Pokemon for this. Now, in terms of your weaknesses with regards to ground, you have definitely still got your water type weakness and your ice type weakness, but your grass type weakness is now gone. And with your poison type weakness, you would be weak to ground and also psychic. So you have got 4 main weaknesses here: ground, psychic, water, and ice. Now, what I would recommend here is to go for the grass type if you're going for more offensive, because it hits two of the types very effectively. It hits water type super effectively, and it also hits ground type super effectively, whilst being neutral in terms of psychic, but it does take super effective damage from the ice type there, so you do have to be very cautious with playing it just in case an ice type does come in. If you're wanting to be more safe, you definitely could run a water type. It's only super effective against the ground typing, but it will take neutral damage from the water type and not very effective damage from the water type and not very effective damage from the ice type there as well, and neutral from the psychic. So it's more of a safe defensive play to have the water typing there, but grass is more offensive. Now, if you want to kind of just take the more neutral route and get rid of your psychic weakness, you have got the dark type option here. None of the other typings will have any impact on this. It will always be neutral except for the psychic, which obviously you then become immune to. So that's another way that you can play this. Again, it depends on your personal style, how you want to play this, but I would recommend any of those. Next up, we have got the Ice and Poison type. Now, there are currently no Poison Ice type Pokemon that do exist in the Pokemon world. Hopefully, there'll be something that might come out by the time of this recording being released. So, Ice and Poison type have got 5 weaknesses. They've got a weakness to Steel, Rock, and Fire from the Ice type, and then Psychic and Ground from the Poison typing. Now, I would say that Ground type Terastal, again, is the best option here. So you have got, in terms of the Ice type coverage, you're covering the Fire type, the Rock type, and the Steel type, all for super effective damage, and then the Ground and Poison type, no, Ground and Psychic type, sorry, for neutral damage. So ground type Terastal works really, really well here. You have also got the water Terastal here, which hits super effectively against the ground, it hits super effectively against fire, and it hits super effectively against rock, whilst also having neutral damage, not very effective damage, sorry, from the steel and neutral from the psychic. So water also works really, really well. And then I put the dark type in here. That hits the psychic type for super effective damage and also hits neutral on all of the other weaknesses that you have. So realistically, water and ground are going to be your best Terastal types here, but dark is also a secondary one if you want to take more of a alternating approach to the Terastal, but I would personally go for a ground or water. Next up, we have the Poison Psychic type, and the 2 Pokemon that have this typing are Galarian Slowbro and Galarian Slowking. Now, with this typing, you have got 3 weaknesses. You have got ground, you have got ghost, and you have got a dark type weakness. With this, I would definitely recommend that you possibly run a Fairy or a Dark type Terastal. The Fairy type Terastal covers the Dark type super effective damage and takes neutral damage from the Ghost type, whereas the Dark type Terastal hits the Ghost type super effectively and takes neutral damage from, not very effective damage from the Dark type. If you're wanting to focus more from the ground type weakness aspect, you have got ground or water, which will cover those for super effective. Both cover those for super effective damage on the ground and also take neutral damage from the ghost and the dark. So realistically, it is just looking at what you would prefer here. Dark works really well, fairy works really well, grass and water, they also work really well. So any of those can be your best Terastals in this case. Next up, we have got the Poison and Rock type. Now, the only Pokemon here is Nihilego, and I think I've said that wrong. If I have said that wrong, feel free to comment down below how I should say it with the pronunciation, but regardless, we're here talking about the Poison Rock type. Now, the biggest issue here is the ground typing. You're 4 times weak to ground. You have also got weaknesses to water and to also psychic and steel. Now, with regards to this, I would definitely consider going for a dark type. Dark type will hit neutral on the ground type. It will also hit neutral on the steel type and will hit super effective on the psychic type as well there, and also neutral on the water type. The best Terastal, at least in my opinion here, would be the grass type. It takes neutral damage from the psychic and also steel, and will hit super effectively on the ground and super effectively on the water, but you do have to be very cautious of that steel type coming in. So if you could have another Pokemon like a fighting type in your team to cover that, that would work really well. You've also then got the water typing. The water typing will obviously be super effective against the ground type. It will hit neutral on the psychic and also the steel typing, and will take neutral damage from the water typing as well. So water typing works a bit better as a defensively aspect. If you're looking for offensive, I'd say go for grass. If you're looking again kind of more of a defensive, more of a sort of taking it out of any of its weaknesses aspects, then dark would definitely be your option there. So depending on which one you want to play will be which one you decide out of those. Next up, we have got the Poison Steel type, which there are none currently. I believe there is a Ground Steel type rumoured to be coming into the game at the time of recording, but I don't know if that actually has happened because the game hasn't released when I've been recording this. So we have got the Steel Poison type. The big standout weakness here is going to be your Ground type, and your other weakness is going to be your Fire typing. So realistically, the best Terastal for this is going to be the water typing, because it hits both your weakness for super effective damage and also takes neutral damage from the fire type, from the ground type, and not very effective damage from the fire type. You can also run grass to hit the ground typing, but do be cautious. Obviously, a fire type could definitely come in, so that is much more of a risky play to go for, but it's definitely an option for you to go for if you are confident and you have another Pokemon on your team, such as a Flash Fire Pokemon that could use that bait. You've then got the ground type Terastal as well, which is super effective against the fire type, and it hits neutrally on the ground type as well. So realistically, water is your best Terastal, but if you want to use grass or ground, you can use them, but just be a little bit cautious of the impact, especially with the grass. Next up, we have got the water and poison typing. Now this is a fantastic typing. You've got Tentacruel and Toxapex, which are really good options to use with this typing. And weakness wise, you've got electric type, you have got the ground type, and you have got the psychic type. So you have actually picked up an extra weakness than just the pure poison type, but at the same time you have got more coverage with regards to the water type as well. So with this, I would definitely suggest that you go for a ground type Terastal. So ground type Terastal will allow you to be able to hit the electric type for super effective damage, and it will hit neutral on both of your psychic and your ground type options that can come in as well. So ground type I think works really, really well as an option here. You've also got grass. Now grass will take not very effective damage from the ground typing. It will take neutral from the psychic typing, and will take not very effective damage from the electric typing as well. So it will work quite well as a defensive output there. And you could also just change the dark. It'll give you a psychic type immunity, and with regards to the electric and the ground typing, you'll take neutral damage there as well. So realistically, I think ground is your best for offensively, and then grass and dark work better if you're going for more of a defensive output Terastal. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate every single view that any of these videos get, and you know I've put so much time into this that if you made it this way, then all I can do is thank you with my heart, because you know you're what helps the channel. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. As I said, if you could interact, I'd really appreciate it. Comment down below if there are any ones that you disagree with, or any ones that you would add a different Terastal typing to, and give your reasoning for it as well. And I'd really love to see that. I think that would be a really, really cool way to interact with me, and I will definitely take a look at them, and I'll try and reply as much as I can. But yeah, thank you so much for watching.